I believe in everyone introducing themselves because you guys do it so much better than I do. We are really cozy up here. Yeah, hey. Claudia, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure, my name is Claudia Damas. I'm based in Miami and I'm the CEO of Altermark. We are an out-of-home specialist. We've been planning and buying out-of-home for 37 years and we do it around the world.
I'm Albert Thompson, happy to be back at another MediaPost Summit. I am the Managing Director of Digital Innovation at Walton Isaacson. We are a culture-first agency. That's probably the best way of sort of characterizing, I would say. And I guess for my responsibilities is to bring a lot of the ideation of technology and digital to all our facets of what we do as an agency, in particular on the media buying side.
You guys all just heard me speak a few moments ago. I'm Will Vargas. I come from PBK. I'm the supervisor on the Florida Lottery account. And yeah.
Thank you guys for taking my threat of keeping your introductions less than 1 minute very seriously.
Yeah, that's exactly why I ended it is
it's good.
The way it is.
Yeah, I see the side eye over here. All right, let's dive into it. So digital out-of-home spending has been steadily increasing since COVID, right? And it's projected to hit something like 19 billion this year, which is still a very small piece of the overall media budget pie, right? Why is that the case, right? Why is it still such a small piece of total media budgets? Claudia, you want to kick us off?
Sure, I'll take it away. I think it is the most complicated medium, and a lot of people are very scared to engage with it. So at this point, digital seems to be a much more simple format. We kind of go to certain operators, and we can quickly target many people. With out-of-home, and Sarah showed us in her case study, there's a lot of different media owners. It's very complex. Every creative has to be very, very different, and it has to be very creative. So there's so many elements to out-of-home to make it successful. And so I believe it's one of the most, if not the most, challenging in terms of media formats. Print, TV, radio, and online. It's very complex. It's out in the real world. You really need to hold the advertiser's hand. Creative is, as we know, 75% of increase of the success of a campaign is based on creative. So you have to have media team, creative team, data team. There's a lot that goes into the ecosystem of making out-of-home successful. So perhaps it's difficult, and that's why we have that small pie, which is growing. So we're all doing an amazing job of making everybody feel more comfortable with the medium, I believe.
Yeah, it's difficult to measure too, right? How do you prove the ROI?
Yeah, correct. I mean, that's changing as well. You know, we all face this challenge of ROI. I saw the billboard, I went into the store and I bought. And I always say, only until we have chips, you know, where it like measures our eye and then it follows the person, which may be soon.
I mean, 2030 at this point, right?
Right, but it's close by. But that's, again, that's also changing. With mobile data, we are able to tell you where your audience is. We have heat maps for every campaign. Again, Sarah measured the success of the campaign. We saw the increase in sales. And so I think, you know, the measurement question, I'm working with a company out of Amsterdam, and they have live data is now the new thing. So we know measurement from every minute. It's not, you know, a monthly number of impressions. It's live data. What's happening in front of your board right now? Who's in front of the panel that you saw right now? What apps do they have on their phone? It's almost an amount of data. So I think that's changing, and that's great for our industry.
Where do you guys see the budgets coming from going into digital out-of-home? Is it shifting from other channels, or are brands just having more money all of a sudden?
Well, I mean, the first thing I would address is your first question about why is it such a small portion of the pie. I think a lot of it has to do with how it was previously sold or it was looked at. It was very much sold and spoken about as the real estate business. So look, we all have a friend in real estate. Most of us are not, other than the place we sleep at night. I think the other thing that people didn't really get into is it is a form of advertising that's very much wrapped around our human in-person experience. And to really do it well, you have to get into the human observation game. Like, you have to understand why people look at what point it garners attention and it doesn't, and start to plan for it. I don't think a lot has to go into running pay-per-click ads on Google and Facebook at this point in time. You set up your parameters, it's in a console, you load up the ad, you turn it on, and then you can start to see results. But when you start thinking about digital out of home or out of home as a broader context, you really have to get into the human experience business, because you're trying to map a point of attention or reflection or advertising in front of someone that it's sort of inked and sticks. And I think that's what's essentially not happening. I think as people doing that, they will find that it has a place of greater common sense than where some of the other investment spending is going. But that's going to be a slow roll in terms of watching monies roll over. The other thing is, you can back into out of home through a series of budgets. You could tie it to experiential. We'll get into this later. You could tie it into CTV. You could just run it as its independent advertising stack. There are a lot of other facets of advertising that don't pivot and complement or not a part of all these other budget line items, which, at every agency and brand is so siloed. So I think the complexity of that is, well, who pays for this? Because it could live in anything and everything and then nothing altogether. So I think that's the thing, is that people haven't gotten to the point where they've started to compartmentalize, but then reorganize the playbook and say, well, this can actually complement almost every different siloed investment spend if we were to look at it that way. Right now, they're like, oh, that's out of home, that's over there. Like, no, actually, it's in everything. So I think that's part of what the industry has to focus on the next year or two, is really unpacking how it lives in all the facets of investment channels.
And so when you're trying to sell these in with clients, right? Will, you mentioned that it took 2 years just to get the Florida Lottery bought into transitioning from static to digital. I mean, we don't have 2 years in the industry, right? Like, at this point, we have a new technology that we have to start selling into them. So what's the use case, right? How do you make that proposition to wary clients?
Probably the immediacy of being able to turn it on and off. Out of home is seeing some of the lowest cost increases across all media channels during this inflation period. So I think that's very alluring to a lot of brands. The CPMs are a lot lower, and it's very flexible and very nimble.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you start to look at organizing the marketing playbook, and I think this notion of underpriced attention is what people need to start to dial into. It's part of the reason that people like Google and Facebook ads, because of the cost efficiency. And you start to look at, you look at TikTok, you look at LinkedIn, they're just platforms where the attention doesn't cost a lot of money. Look, the only thing we care about is attention. Brands and the agencies who work with them, we're attention whores. That's all we're trying to fight for. That is the fight in this world, is that everyone wants more attention one way or the other. The thing about out of home is it has the ability to garner it. I don't think it has the ability to garner it in a consistent 24-hour, always on for every brand. I think people need to start looking and compartmentalize it into moments. And what point does out of home really win the moment? Think about, Super Bowl, NBA All-Star, Formula 1 racing. I mean, these major things, you could think of South by Southwest, CES, these major events where everyone's eyes are dialed into everything that's omnipresent around them and speaking to them. So when you start to look at that, then that wins in ways that other tactics that get way more money and investment and have teams built around don't even have a place on the playing board. And I think that's what people haven't looked at, is like, people are picking their favorites, people are picking what they're most comfortable with, people are picking what they've resourced around, people are not picking where the consumer is telling us we could ultimately win. And that's what Steve was saying about, a user's turn of the head is their remote. It's the gaze. They are signaling what matters and when and how. If we were mapping against that, then out of home would fall more and more in favor than it has, just because it's not as popular at some organization or said brand and said agency. I think the Olipop example was a very smart way of looking at brand identity, consumer pathway, how choices are made around the consumption, and that this, in this environment like Miami, ultimately wins when no one's necessarily sitting at a computer clicking on a Google shopping ad. And I think that's the point of how planning needs to be thought about, not the way that it's currently being done at most of the enterprises.
I mean, that's what we're all trying to do as marketers and media professionals, right? Is like reach people in culturally relevant moments, and how do we ingest ourselves in things that are just naturally happening in their daily lives, right? You mentioned the Super Bowl. Claudia, I think you had a good client with Carnival, right? Where you did some integrations of, hey, there is a huge festival going on. How am I going to integrate with this and make it as seamlessly as possible? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah, and I'm gonna show you tomorrow the case study, but it was Carnival in Rio, and we needed to stand out. There's a lot of brands that want to target a lot of people that go to Rio, Salvador, and we were able to, with Mercado Pago, which is the digital bank card for Mercado Libre, which is the Amazon of Latin America. We were able to target audience through their whole entire journey. And it had very much an essence of Olipop. So we were through the whole entire journey, present. Creative was extremely important. We did special builds. We had interaction. We were integrating with people. So you know, being able to target culture is very, very important on the streets, and you're able to follow those people throughout their moment. So they woke up, they were getting into costume, they were getting into the metro, they were heading to the street parties. Where were the street parties? So the team had to understand where were the biggest parties, excuse me, which were the digital formats that we wanted to interact with, what was the messaging, how was the messaging gonna change? And you know, the impact was great. You guys will see more tomorrow. And that's the essence of out of home, and we continue to talk about, you know, how it integrates with other formats. That's the beauty of it. So when you do online, you do online. When you do print, you do print. But when you do out of home, you do it all. And that's, again, perhaps why it's the small piece of the pie. Every conference I ask the clients, why is it a small piece of the pie? Nobody can give me like a great answer, because you have people like Sarah that come up and Will that come up and show these great case studies that are so successful, and they have ROI, and they have, you know, CTAs, and it's all great. So I still don't have the answer. Perhaps maybe we'll get it at this conference. But as a non-objective person, it makes the most sense. You're able to follow that journey and integrate yourself without being intrusive into everyone's lives. You know, we're not at the point of being a discussion for privacy issues, for mental health issues. We are a free museum every day for the world. We're out there. And again, I go back to creative. For us, creative is really important. We built inside of Altermark a creative agency, Alter Labs. So we develop creative for our clients, because we would get many clients that would take a mobile ad and want to put it on a billboard, or a print ad and want to put it on a billboard, and that doesn't work. So creative is really important. Because we are trying to, again, steal those eyeballs from the cell phone, from, you know, your thoughts, and that works creative a lot.
Yeah, and you know, we're all media professionals in here. We don't have to talk about like the other side of the business, the creatives over there. But CTA is wildly important in what we are placing in digital out of home, right? So where do you drive customers to? Like, what, if you guys could choose, what would be your ideal call to action on your placements that you do with digital out of home?
It's interesting because it's the digital out of home space. Part of the challenge is it doesn't meet all the nice little buzzwords, you know, KPIs and
Synergy.
upper lower funnel, and it's a branding endeavor. It's if people say that marketing is a game of ambition, you need some ambition coming into the out of home space, because you need to be smart about it, and it's a human physical journey, not these click funnel journeys that you can just use buzzwords and clients will sign off on it. You have to explain the design behind it. So when you start to think about, you know, all right, getting into the idea of a narrative, which some has been lost in advertising as a business, a lot of the things in out-of-home space are more on brand. I mean, look, if you're a QSR, what you're trying to say is McDonald's is that way. So people keep walking until they can smell the fries. So, but you need to think about that. It could be for an Olipop that we have a pop-up stand that way, so you can get into actual real consumption. You need to, and I think a lot of the practitioners in the business aren't thinking about the actual physical experience to pull through in planning and execution, for which you should think about messaging and narrative and what is effectively going to resonate. But there are so many options based on the solve, because I think one of the other things is out of home backs into retail media. We know retail media is outgrowing every other form of media because for a brand, it maps on supply chain. It's not that hard. But a lot of the ecosystem for our digital out-of-home in particular maps on a retail media footprint. And those call to actions are very much like go down the shelf, go down the aisle, or walk into the store, essentially. So I think there's a situational aspect to this media type where you have to really understand the environment, and when the person walks up to it, what are they actually able to do? What's achievable? That just requires some basic thought process. I think we're just in a world where people just don't want to do the work and sort of lay it out. But it's very common sense because these people turn to consumers and that's what they do individually. It's kind of like the notion of, can I get directions to where you work? I don't know. I can't tell you. Well, how did you get there? I don't know. I just get in the car. Like, we got a little bit of that going on in marketing today where it's like, where people aren't turning their personal behaviors into solid common sense business practices on behalf of a brand. So you have to think about all the creative opportunities. And I love when you talked about, because you basically said is, look, we have to survey the environment to discern what is going to make sense, and that is what we are executing, not that it's not perfect. I think we are in this matching luggage era where someone takes a TV spot and throws it into every other channel as a pre-roll, and there we go. And the same thing from the social media ad. It's like they're taking a print ad and cutting it down to 300 by 250 pixels and running it across social media instead of developing assets for social. And I think when they look at out of home, it's a harder leap because it requires greater intentionality and really sort of nailing the messaging.
What about, journey has come up a couple of times in our conversation, the customer journey, reaching them at all points of the customer journey when they're out and about. So where does digital home fit in there? Is it a performance channel? Can it be a performance channel, or is it always about brand awareness?
I think it depends on the client and the category. I think for CPG and a lot of QSR brands, obviously, it's like Albert said, go out down the street and buy a hamburger. You know what I mean? So I think it just depends on it's all about customization, right, of the creative and making the best use out of the format.
Yeah, and it's getting, just here today, the amount of environments that are getting a screen tacked into them, we are able to target people at every moment. And so I think it's both. I think we're able to impact. I think we're able to see, ROI. Little by little, we're going to be able to measure even more and more. That's only going to improve measurements. And so now I think it's about probably filtering out the good screens and the bad screens, because I think they're definitely, I envision an overabundance of screens that may drive us all insane. So I think it's hopefully, the companies that are providing a service at a proper location where it makes sense, let's grow those. But I also worry sometimes that maybe we will be inundated with screens all over the world, because I speak to many people that say, Claudia, tell me, what do you think about the industry? I'm thinking of putting up screens here, 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 there, and there. And so I think that's something we also want to worry about, not sort of putting screens in front of everybody's face constantly, but in key moments where we can really target them and it makes sense. And providing a service. So TerraBoost, you're providing a service. Charger, Fuse, you're providing a service. So I think when we plan, we need to think in that manner too. And we want to connect our brands to screens that add to the beauty of the world, not really clutter it. So I think that's important.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to understand consumer decisioning, in particular, as you were saying, relative to the category that you're in, and what screen can give you that, or what exposure point can give you that, and what doesn't. Because some of them, all they can do is give you a branding impression. Some of them, you can actually track to store visitation. So you apply different parameters based upon this point of exposure in terms of how consumers make choices, and whether this can be a catalyst for the next choice or an ultimate consumer choice of being a part of foot traffic and walking in. And again, that still just requires a level of understanding of time and place, level of exposure, level of engagement that's possible and achievable. How long is that person going to be standing there between passing through versus like time and attention? When we did it for our Lexus client, and there was a difference between what we expected Clear Channel Lamar to deliver versus gas station TV. So we didn't try to compare all the partners we worked with and hold them to the same output standard. Look, if you're pumping gas, you're pumping it in a car. It's not that difficult. So you should probably run a car ad. And then that's more achievable to track store visitation than if someone sees signage that is off in the distance that is yet another reminder that should be my brand of choice. So I think if you apply different parameters to it, then you can be very smart about what is achievable. and manage that back to a client so they understand what role it plays. I think there's just poor articulation of the role of media options in the marketing playbook, so clients can be level set and say, okay, now I understand what that's going to give us and not give us, and we can now keep it moving.
You know, I would add, not just show me a car when I'm pumping gas, but show me food. Because I've also noticed that coming from Arby's, most people first go from the gas station and then immediately go to Arby's. Like, the connection points between that as their next stop after a gas station was phenomenal for me to be able to see that. But okay, so you've introduced some interesting topics. So Albert, you talked about real estate, right? We're all just working in a real estate company. Claudia, you talked about the quality of the screen, right? Which I can't agree with you guys more. So if you guys could only pick one, would you pick the quality of the screen or the placement of the environment of where it's at? What's more important?
I couldn't pick one. It has to be.
Well, you have to,
Both.
Claudia.
I'm not picking one.
Play my game with me. Russian roulette of digital out of home.
Can we tap out?
It has to be both. It has to be quality and location, or else we're doing a disservice to our industry.
So
It
it's
has to be
equal 50-50 split. There's no slight edge to one, 51-49.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, I can only pick what the consumer is going to do because they're the only ones guaranteed to win.
I mean, maybe if it was a Tamagotchi-sized screen, that might be a different story, but I would agree it's both.
Let's talk about programmatic, right? So more and more digital out-of-home is becoming programmatic. So where do you guys buy? Do you have a preference between buying programmatic, or do you prefer to buy direct?
We haven't leaped into the programmatic out-of-home space yet for a few of kind of the pain points I think that are getting massaged out. The inventory is not guaranteed. The CPMs are honestly very high compared to buying direct. So there's a lot of kinks that I think need to get worked out for it to be advantageous or make sense for the client, you know what I mean? But I think the audience targeting is very attractive, and it's something that is going to continue to develop, you know what I mean? I think that programmatic out-of-home will be part of people's out-of-home plan, in the next 5 years. And I stand on that, so I love digital out-of-home.
To me, all are right, none are wrong. And the reason why I say that is, first of all, when you work direct, you can understand what they have to offer inherently. Clear line of sight, clear metrics. You can have really detailed conversations, understand the value prop. That's just important. Even to decide we will buy you programmatically because it fits into an ecosystem. So, some of the partners in the room we've worked directly with like Loop and Atmosphere, because we have a specific solve for a client they can deliver. We've also looked at it programmatically in a sense where we've tethered CTV traditionally, because you don't have to sell a client on CTV in this era, to digital out-of-home companies who started their life as CTV companies, not in your home, and tethering them together as a continuous path of the screen. So to move from connected TV in the home to connected TV that's in a bar, in an elevator, in a lobby, in a dentist's office, in a cleaner's, et cetera. I mean, but that's an easy straight-through buy. And then we've looked at the same thing of going programmatic because we need to map experience to advertisers in an omni-channel way that's out in an environment. In particular, when you start to look at the lost view once people leave the house. And okay, what's the consumer doing now? We know they have a phone, but that's it. Out of home has the ability to pick up the lost view. And that's a view every marketer feels intolerant of not having, losing sight of a consumer. So I think there are configurations where literally we have done it simultaneously for multifaceted reasons. So I'm a proponent of you likely need to be doing both. And then there are times we've done event activations where out of home was part of the package. So we'd be stupid not to buy it if it's in and around the arena because we're spending all this money on the arena and the event itself. And that's not necessarily programmatic. It's not necessarily bought direct. It's just part of, what an arena and whom they work with and who controls the signage. So, so that's 3 different lanes as it is. But if you're going to be very smart and run multifaceted campaigns, that is just how you will likely be buying out of home in general.
So it's 2024, which means it is an Olympics year and an election year, which always throws just the media industry in a fury and a tailspin, right? Are you guys going to see this impacting digital out-of-home at all, like it would with all the other channels?
I'll kick that off. So I think we kind of talked about this in our initial regroup that, yeah, you don't really see a lot of political ad dollars going out of home. As Albert was saying, CTV is booming, and that's actually, I think yesterday, right, the speaker was saying that CTV budgets are increasing like 4 to 5 times for political advertisers. I think that the addressable and audience targeting and is really important in the behavioral aspects of CTV, and that everyone's trying to hone in on the right, the right impression, right? So out of home's just not at the top of the list for political.
Yeah, I think, well, look, some of the players should be making political money, and that's that's why I talked about the idea of connected TV out of digital out-of-home companies should be tethering to CTV, because it's a view path. If I see candidacy advertising at home, then I should be walking into retail and see them again on a different connected screen. To me, that's not a difficult sell. The other thing, what's the oldest school of signage for political? The little stakes in the ground, vote for your congressman. I mean,
Right
yes,
outside the library.
Been running that for, I don't know, since the 1800s, probably even longer. So should we modernize that so it's not something at a stop sign? Absolutely. Is someone selling that through? I don't know. Obviously, they're doing it because that's underpriced, nearly free attention. But there are aspects of that. While I'm killing time pumping gas, should I see an ad? Yes, I should. Should I see it through grocery store TV? Probably shouldn't. I think what the industry has to do is stake its claim that it matters in major moments, like the political advertising, like the Olympics, because there are certain categories of advertising that made their name by owning and participating in this movement. This is how TikTok and social media got big. It was around Super Bowl, because everybody's chatting and talking it up, like, oh my God, look at all the attention here, all the eyeballs. We got to be running ads here. We need an ad model here. And then can we sustain it year round? So it'd be prudent of the players in the sector to figure out, I don't even care if they do it collectively and sit in a room and say, how are we going to take a shot at getting some of this investment so that we can create a new threshold, a new level, a new playing field, a new baseline, that's what I'm going for, that would catapult them into 2025, into 2026 and beyond.
So before we open it up to audience questions, last question for me. We've talked a lot, and you guys have said some really great things about what you're excited about for the channel, right? I think there is a ton of opportunity that we still have left to explore. Is there anything that you wish we would just stop doing with digital out-of-home? What do you hate the most about the channel?
Well, I think we should stop saying it's top funnel always. I think it has to be there, present through the whole funnel. And please, creative. Let's do really cool creative, because it makes the campaign. It's a huge thing, and I think creative is really a big driver for success. So.
I would just say, it was just probably to finish my ramble from the previous segment, was the industry needs to do a better job of asserting its will. And that's just what needs to happen collectively as part of asserting its will that it has a place. Life is still about what you experience in person, not sitting in front of a TV, not on a device. We are still about this experience economy, and it's accelerated. While we're all trying to travel to Dubai and Mykonos because where we live is no longer good enough. When you start thinking about that, the only thing that's going to go with us other than our cell phone is the out-of-home advertising experience. A lot of stuff isn't going to make the trip overseas. So I remember spending time in London and Piccadilly Square, and I'm like, oh, this is like Times Square, except the buildings are 1,000 years old instead of 100 years old. So you start to understand that it has its place in defining and shaping our experiences. So the sector needs to figure out how to double down on why it matters, because we're spending money on stuff that just will not matter very soon.
Yeah, I would say from a pain point perspective, kind of what Claudia was saying is, think of it across the funnel, and I think you need really engaging and exciting creative so that you're making the most out of the channel, because if you have very boring, creative on the screen, it's going to get lost and go over the consumer's head, you know what I mean? It's just they're going to drive by it and not pay attention, so.
All right, thank you guys. Question.
We have time for questions, guys.
Hi, it's Stephen Brooks from Accelerant. It's Albert, correct?
Yes, it is.
So I thought that your analysis of kind of the source problem is spot on in terms of requiring a culture shift among buyers and marketers to recognize the opportunities. But we all know that those buyers, those marketers, and the agencies that sort of gatekeep what deals go through and what ones don't are, a mixture of overworked or, uninformed or less informed than perhaps they would like to be on this. So what tactical things can we do to actually take the fight to them, right, and make their job easier?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I mean, look, I was not a proponent of out of home because I've been a digital person for a quarter of a century. So for me, I was like, miss me with that. And part of it was what it was doing, how it's being sold, and the reason clients liked it. Clients just wanted to see their name on a billboard. It was very much vanity. And I was like, where's the consumer decisioning as part of this thought process? They were like, huh? So me becoming an advocate is like you turning someone who poo-pooed it into more of a super fan. I think there's a lot of things not yet to be maximized. When you say, what do we do? I think you have to collectively as an industry stalk everyone. And you have to all sit in a room and say, we're going to stalk the industry until it realizes we have always mattered, because it's one of the oldest formats of advertising that's ever been in existence, period, and it's not going to go anywhere. I think the other thing is how you're selling it through. When clients say, hey, we're focusing on retail media, like, okay, well, half the players in the industry are in the retail media space, because why do you think Walmart bought Vizio? They don't want the TVs in Walmarts. They want the inventory path that Vizio has that's outside of a Walmart building. So Loop, Atmosphere, Grocery Stores TV, Vizio. Yeah, same conversation. All the movements they make, you have to use them to your advantage. If you look at how experiential is a boom now, everyone's putting on mega conferences, mega concerts. All sports is going through the roof. The stock on sporting events is like Google stock was years ago. It has no ceiling. Then you need to say, yep, we're part of that too. We're the signage in and around arenas and the signage walking up to arenas. If you just go down the line, same thing with CTV. When I talk to Loop and Atmosphere and they talk about their early generations, oh, you're a CTV company, you're just not in my bedroom or my living room. Okay, so you're going to have to make it very clear and shove it in their face. We're part of the CTV path. That's why we buy it that way instead of buying it in a silo. There are so many facets for which you should be part of it. You think about ride sharing. You think about the future of cities. Every conversation, every room you all need to be in, asserting your will collectively as a group, and this sort of rising tides will lift all our boats. Yes, there'll be more winners. Some will win more than others, but that's okay. But what I see is that you have to get out of the silos of where you are and where you're selling and start selling to the populace at scale, because this is what TikTok is doing in raising their volume acceleration. They're at every conference, they're on every panel, they're at private brand summits, they're at everything to the point they're undeniable, and you have brands on TikTok that have no business ever being there in life, but it's undeniable. You all have not made this space undeniable, but the unique thing is you can pivot in all these investment line items between CTV to experiential to retail media, almost everything that's growing, you have a place. We're trying to get to a point where we move creator content into the digital out-of-home space. So get it out of organic social, past paid social, into CTV, into digital out-of-home. Like once you start restructuring your value chain in the advertising ecosystem, because then there's shopper marketing. You're in that too. You need to be in crashing every sandbox, because you're actually already there. The problem is people don't know how to buy because they lack curiosity and imagination and reimagining, bless you, what they've always been doing. And that's very much the point. I just think you all need to, you gotta remember, it's all about organizing marketplaces. People put money into organized marketplaces. You guys got to better organize this stuff so people can start dumping more money into it.
Hi guys, appreciate the panel here. I'm James Giglio. I'm with MVP Interactive. We're a creative technology company that for over a decade have been building experiential experiences for brands and sports teams. And so I really appreciate what you're saying about the creative element or the lack thereof of digital out of home. And so, you know, I remember talking to clients about augmented reality, virtual reality, and, you know, it going over their head and then worrying about Wi-Fi, right? And so when we talk about the future and where you want creative to go, what are your thoughts about fully immersive experiences when it comes to digital out of home and the need for the attention of users, right? Because to your point, Claudia, people are busy, right? You know, you don't want to put screens for the sake of screens. You don't want to shoehorn technology for the sake of technology. So you really want to grab the attention. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on blending that balance of creative technology and full immersion.
Yeah, I mean, my first thought is keep it simple. Remember, out of home, most of us are moving rather quickly. And so I think that's something that a lot of brands forget to do. With digital, if you have the opportunity to have movement, that adds a whole nother layer. So if you can mix movement and keeping a creative simple and relevant. So it depends. And you'll see tomorrow the creative that we did during Carnival, a very busy, full-time, you know, creative, even on a digital unit, depends if you buy the whole unit. You can do extensions, you can do special projects on units themselves, something that is different. And so, and with digital nowadays, you have so much opportunity. I even spoke to the team. We're doing a lot of CGI, which is a funny, I almost put it into digital. I was like, can we talk about CGI? Is that digital? Is it not digital? You know, with the concept of digital and mixing it with out of home, the options are endless. But it's the same basics with out of home. You know, if we're gonna do a big creative in a blue sky, don't do a blue creative because you won't see it. There's certain fonts that work. There's certain colors that are really good for out of home. So that's why we created labs. Labs basically tutors our clients, and they'll send us creative, and we'll be like, no. Your logo needs to be bigger, like, or else no one's ever gonna know that that's your billboard. So it's, you know, we have a guideline sheet. I'll share it with you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But it's actually pretty simple, and it really depends on your brand as well. If your brand is old school and just doesn't, you know, mesh with the culture, then it's not going to get picked up on the TikToks, because that's another big thing of creative. If your creative is awesome, it's going to become viral, and therefore the impact will be exponential. So it's essential, you know.
Guys, we have to wrap, but we're going to talk about this in a roundtable in about half an hour. So everybody, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.